Hello, all. I have a script. So, I have been advised by people who have worked professionally in marketing that one thing I can do to gather like minded people to my channel, and that I wouldn't be personally embarrassed about doing, although with some of the stuff I've done on this channel, what wouldn't I be embarrassed to do, right? Is to do more reviews on this channel. Other publishers' RPG books, which I wouldn't at all be catty about, music reviews, which seem to have low view counts but high conversion rates, and movie reviews. And hey, so I'll be talking about 28 years later today. There will be heavy spoilers. And this will also include a bit of a whine at the end because for some reason, I'm not embarrassed about doing that either. So, yesterday, actually 2 days ago, I wrote this up yesterday. On Saturday, I watched 28 Years Later. And I must say, there's something very weird going on where a mainstream brand new Blu ray release is the exact same price as a movie ticket here these days. And yeah, I know this one's a few months old, but I'll be picking up the follow up Bone Temple when it's released on disc tomorrow. And, movie theaters seem to be really struggling for all sorts of reasons these days. And one reason might be that I can, for the same price as seeing it once in the theater, and that's not even counting transportation there and back and associated costs like parking if, if someone's taking a car, or food and snacks in the theater. And, this is just assuming going by yourself and only needing one ticket. But for the price of that one ticket, you can wait a few months and have it forever at the same price. That's weird, right? Or if you really want to make movies feel worthless, or especially the theater experience feeling worthless, you can watch it on a streaming service that treats even recent movies like some sickly ass chicken legs at an all you can eat buffet. Yeah. And, this went to streaming, weeks before the physical media came out. And I don't know how the movie business works. I mean, are theater and physical and streaming audiences completely separate these days? Does it matter how this is done? I don't know. But if you're trying to actually make movies for money and you're not expecting it to be like $1 billion thing, which, as I understand it, 28 years later did decently, but it was never going to be $1 billion franchise, I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't know the thinking of movie executives, not at all. But what I will say is the one thing that's constant in all these conversations, technology has fucked creative work, and I'm not joking one little bit when I say that broadband internet has been a disaster for humanity in every way. So, 28 Years Later is the third movie in a series after 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. The premise is that a virus that can be transmitted through any bodily fluid such as a tear or drop of blood or bit of saliva turns any person into a mindless, murderous maniac within seconds. But these infected people don't attack each other. They're living humans, but these movies are generally considered to be zombie movies because narratively, what's the difference? Basically, in the first movie, Britain falls within a month, but it has a hopeful ending. The second movie is about how Britain can't be reclaimed, it's just doom and gloom and dread and depression all the way down. They're gritty, nasty, heart-rending movies. I highly recommend them. 28 Years Later starts off with the initial outbreak. Get us, it's been a few years since the last one, so, familiarize us with how this rage virus works. And immediately, a room full of children is massacred. I think it's trying to recreate the feeling of the opening of 28 Weeks Later, which was pretty nasty and oh shit. But it doesn't quite reach that level of oh no. But maybe for me, this just seemed like a repetition of that one. And for me, a dead kid isn't any more tragic than a dead adult, especially not narratively in fiction. And they don't graphically show the kids getting ripped apart, although that is what's happening in the scene. So we skip forward 28 years, and the UK is under strict quarantine. The end of 28 weeks later is sort of hand waved away, saying that continental Europe eliminated the infected that made it over there. And so our movie starts off, the movie proper after the intro. You know, there's a village on a small island off the UK coast where the technology is effectively medieval, even though the older adults remember the time before the virus. Father is going to bring his 12-year-old son on his first trip to the mainland, to the mainland UK to gather resources, and it's like a rite of passage. Everyone in the village is celebrating this. It's a rite of passage, since of course this is a very dangerous thing to do. The trip is an effective way to introduce how these people live and what all, the current status quo is, since it's the father teaching the son how to survive out there. After they return home, the movie takes a drastic turn as it becomes focused on the family drama with infidelity, the mother's illness, and the disintegration of trust within the family. And I think this all works. Everyone's actions and motivations are something that I only think about after the fact when organizing my thoughts about the movie when I decided I was going to tell you about it. And in the moment, while I was watching the movie, they seemed perfectly natural and believable, and I didn't have to question or wonder about what the fuck these people were doing in the moment. And then ends up, little family strife ends up with the son sneaking out of the village with his mother, leaving his father behind to find what he's been told is an insane doctor that lives out in the wilderness because there's no doctor in the village itself, and he wants to help his mother. Because I guess they thought the movie needed some action, there was a quarantine patrol that ended up on the island, and they're a modern military force with machine guns and everything. And the survivor of that squad meets up with the kid and mother, and we get some idea of the world, what the world outside the UK is like right now. And they pick up a baby along the way. And when we meet the doctor, Ralpo Fiennes, he steals the entire movie, as he so often does in whatever he's in. But to be fair, he's also the only one written with flair. Everyone else is kind of just there, making Aaron Taylor Johnson's casting as the dad perfect. But it's not as insulting as I'm making it out to be, because the movie is well written and these characters aren't dull. They're just it's just the way these people are living. There's not enough room in their lives to be quirky kind of way. Whereas the doctor guy living out in the wilderness, exposed to, the dangers, he's a little odd. So he brings personality that the other characters don't have but shouldn't, if you know what I mean. But we find out the doctor is not really insane, and we get some nice moments with him and the family. The mother dies, the son takes the baby back to the village, but then takes back off into the wilderness to explore. And that's where we leave it, as, there's a sequel filmed at the same time that came out like 6 months later. It's a nice movie. I looked at the reviews after I watched it, and I guess I need to parrot everyone else and say it's a coming-of-age movie, in the backdrop of this post-apocalypse, Britain. And I think it's effective enough as this kind of movie. Again, I liked the movie. I watched it. The very end, I'll get to that. But no point during the movie where I thought, the hell are they doing? And it's got enough violence and shenanigans with the infected that it also satisfies what people would expect of a 28 movie. 28 days, weeks, years, yeah. But the movie's surprisingly sweet and humane in a way these movies just really haven't been, except, well, maybe a touch here and there before, but really, this one goes further with that. I mean, what I had expected is that the kid running off with his mom, I expected that to end up with the downfall of the village, and they kind of tease that in a misdirection. by what, like when he was coming back with his father, they were being chased by the infected. So I thought that was foreshadowing of what was going to happen when this kid goes out. I thought it was going to end up with the downfall of the village, because sanctuaries getting wiped out is what these movies have done in the previous two installments. But it didn't happen. I mean, there's human conflict, but there's no human threat here. And no tragic fallout from human foolishness this time out. So that's all new. Uh, the only victims are a mostly anonymous quarantine squad, and even the for a little while survivor Eric gets a nice few human moments. And I went bare bones in describing what happens because even though I'm describing the plot, there's a ton of really good moments and sequences I don't want to take away from you if you are interested in seeing the movie. It's got real horror elements, but first and foremost, it's like a real movie with good writing and direction and everything. I made the point that horror is one of those types of movies that doesn't have to be good to be effective, but this is good. I don't know if one of the best films of the year period is on the cover, but it's good enough. uh, but I do have a few complaints about the movie. First, couldn't they wait a few years and release this movie in 2030 so it would have actually been released 28 years after the first one? I mean, I suppose that is too much to ask. No, wait 5 years, But if you're going to wait 18 years between the second and third movies anyway, why not? Second complaint. The concept of the alpha infected, like a more advanced version of the infected, is just like, it's like when they introduce like those mutant walkers in The Walking Dead. It's just like, oh, come on. Just no. I mean, it was fine in the moment, but the thing that set the 28 days and 28 weeks later apart is that these aren't zombies. They're living people infected by a virus. That's the one thing this series of movies asked us to believe, and everything that they present in these movies flows and seems realistic as long as we grant them that one thing. The alpha concept, with its extreme resistance to physical damage but not drugs, and especially the pulling spinal columns out of people as a signature move, you can't pretend there's reality to that anymore. You're not just making one concession to believe the movie. And infected by a virus is itself far more believable than the dead have risen, even if these movies are grouped in with zombie movies genre-wise. But at this point, you've gone just completely into fantasy land, which is fine, but it really feels different than what these movies were doing before. And the third complaint. At the very end of the movie, the introduction of the parkour shavs at the end of the movie. Is it chavs? Shavs? No. The parkour chavs. The British people in their tracksuits. It looked like a comedy bit that would have been an ill-advised Shaun of the Dead sequel. I mean, it's introduced as like a stinger to the movie, if I'm using that term correctly, where the story of the movie has concluded, and this is just setting up the sequel. It's like this movie was quite successful, but the follow-up Bone Temple, not so much in the theaters. And I wonder how much of that was people looking at this end bit and thinking, yeah, that's enough of that. I'm good. I mean, as far as the elements in the movie, I could believe the settlement on the island. I could believe the weirdo lone guy surviving out in the wilderness. And it's like Zeke with the monuments. Like, exactly like. We're extrapolating 28 years from that first movie. Things aren't going to be normal. So, okay, this is what could be happening after that. I'll even not question why these quarantine settlements, or, settlements in the quarantine zone, aren't getting supply airdrops from the rest of the world that still has modern civilization and the internet and everything. Although now that I'm saying that out loud, what in the fuck is that all about? After the end of 28 weeks later, I get the strict fuck you quarantine, that makes sense. But to the point of even communication with permanent settlements? Seriously? Christ. That that's that's a bit unbelievable. And there still seem to be a lot of infected running around in the mainland, even though the first movie established that the infected will be starving to death after not so long a time, and even 28 weeks later didn't have any active infected in the quarantine zone, in an area of Britain that had been more densely populated, until they had found a survivor and the events that followed from that. It feels like the infected are there now just because it's that kind of movie rather than any internal logic or consistency. It's like the story of the movie didn't have much to do with the presence of the infected at all. And as far as all the infected still be, it's like, no, I don't accept that they're all eating worms to survive. So I do think it's a thumbs up to the movie overall. It works. Absolutely nothing is bad. It's just not as gritty and real and calamitous as the previous movies in the series. So that's what I thought of the movie. Now for the whining. This movie is nasty in certain ways. As mentioned, they kill a shitload of kids in the opening segment. You don't see the deaths, but you hear the screams and you see the splattering blood. The infected in this movie are also butt-ass naked, with plenty of bouncing dongs as they're running around. And while there's no technicolor spew in their crotch or anything, they are completely filthy. And then there's a bit in the movie where they deliver a baby from the infected mother. There was a pregnant infected, and they deliver a baby. The baby's not infected, as the doctor says, oh, the magic of the placenta. But the point is, it's like in the middle of like a high danger situation. What's basically a zombie is given birth. Not what you usually see in a movie. We do get a lot of slow-mo gore, the over-the-top ripping out of spines. The movie lingers on that sort of thing. And even though the movie isn't about that, it still has all that fun stuff in it. It doesn't pretend to be above it at all. And now for the whining part of that. When Sony releases this, or the graphic even I had to turn away sometimes, child abuse that was in Bring Her Back last year, which was distributed by Sony International, they're positively received by critics and audiences and are successful on a major studio worldwide release level. I mean, shit. Bring Her Back had Sally Hawkins, who 10 years ago was in a movie where she fucks a fish. And that movie was a runaway hit and won multiple Oscars. And 5 years ago, Titane won the Palme d'Or at Cannes and a whole pile of other awards. And that movie is about a woman who fucks cars. I mean, yeah, these descriptions are a bit reductive, but they're not wrong. So, these people do this material, they get awards out the ass. I touch this sort of material, and I'm a skeevy pervert with material so awful it can't allow to be visible at conventions or allowed to be sold on the near monopolistic ebook sales outlet in my industry. So yeah, I'm going to whine about that a little. And the next thing that's on my viewing list is a movie called Dead Kids. Louise Fletcher is in it. She'd already won an Oscar before she made the movie, a few years before the movie, Dead Kids. And the new physical release is being sold under that title, Dead Kids, even though it was only originally released with that title in Australia and New Zealand. It was more well known as Strange Behavior in the US or Small Town Massacre in the UK. So, Dead Kids, a 45-year-old obscure movie released as a limited edition of 10,000 physical copies. That's what can happen in the movie world, and that's available absolutely everywhere that physical movies are sold with no issue at all. But I play around in that sort of sandbox of dead kids, and it's further evidence that I'm a sick, evil fuck who should be buried in the backyard. Just fuck off with that shit. I'm tired of it, and how people yell at me over that shit just isn't doesn't fit with everything else that's allowed to be out in the world. I don't care. I don't. Oh God. So yeah. So thank you for listening to this review. If you find it to be completely relatable and you agree with me, like go buy LOTFP books or something. I guess that's what the marketing person was getting at. If I do these LOTFP link, sign up, subscribe to the website, link in the description. Till next time, I got another script going. That's all. Later.